It feels so good to be back. Hello everyone, it's Ornstein, the humble god king of Dark Souls, with another rousing edition of ONS, the PvP death merry-go-round you both love and hate. Welcome to any new viewers who may stumble across this video and instantly hate me. I adore your company as well. So, it's here, the Dark Souls 2 network test. I was lucky enough to have a friend who let me download the beta from him. That would be my good pal Borellis, who you will see in a future video, which highlights the story and the co-op elements of the network test. This video before you will feature me giving my thoughts on the beta, followed by some music afterwards underneath the rest of the invasions, but I've got a lot of ground to cover. The Dark Souls 2 network test ran on October 12th from 9 PM until 11 PM. At least, that's what was advertised, when in fact, the network test ran for an additional hour, all the way from 9 PM until midnight, which was a welcome surprise. I go through all the various class types in PvP, starting off with the Dark Souls 2 cover boy himself, the Warrior. It's a pretty standard affair for the Warrior. He's equipped with a great sword and a regular sword and decent heavy armor. No noticeable frills or special abilities for him aside from a ring that he has equipped that will automatically send you to another player's world as a blue phantom to help him in the event of an invasion. You can see all of that before you. Instead, I want to talk about the netcode first, which is astoundingly good in comparison to the original Dark Souls. Bearing in mind, this is just a network stress test comprising of only 5,000 or so people. The fact that it ran as smoothly as it did in regards to invasions and summoning is a great change. For those of you who did use the multiplayer elements in the original Dark Souls regularly, you know very well how troublesome it can be at times in terms of connectivity. In total, during the 3 hours, I managed to squeeze in 24 separate invasions. If I were to spend 3 hours in the original Dark Souls now, I'd be lucky to get half that number. Next, I want to discuss how although what you're seeing looks a lot like the Dark Souls you know and love, I can speak from first-hand experience and say that it handles a lot differently. The controls are pretty identical to what we've come to know and expect, but everything feels different. There's a lot more fluidity to the game, the frame rate is incredibly smooth, and the graphics are noticeably better. However, a lot of the movements seem to be newly mocapped or appear rough and awkward. The run cycles, walk cycles, and jump cycles all seem clunky. I'm not sure yet if this is something we'll grow to get used to, or if it's something that will be ironed out in the months to come until the game releases. So although it looks like Dark Souls, what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't exactly feel like Dark Souls when you're actually playing it. This is a good thing though. One of my complaints of the original Dark Souls is how similar it feels to Demon Souls. The network test, to me, handled a lot differently, and perhaps for the better. Only time will tell. As you can see as well, backstabs of course have returned, but the animations have all been adjusted. They seem to have been nerfed damage-wise too, as before, a well-timed backstab could sometimes one-hit KO an opponent, or nearly kill them. There are times here where it seems that it may take 2 or 3 backstabs to kill someone. This could be due to the low level or low equipment level of the weapons, or just from software toning down the powerful nature of backstabs themselves. However, the new animations for the backstabs, to me, are far less rewarding than the old ones. There are times during the network test that I was unsure as to whether I'd even landed a backstab until a few seconds afterwards. There was talk of counter backstab mechanics, but I didn't witness them in the game, but I do recall from prior gameplay reveals that enemies had a way of countering you from behind. Hopefully those do make their way into the game for an added level of depth in multiplayer. And just a few things to note about enemy AI, and I'll talk about that more in the upcoming story/co-op video, that enemy AI doesn't seem to be improved from the first game. It's still very easy to circle and backstab enemies, they're easy to dodge and run past, and their attack patterns are easy to distinguish. This may be due to this being a network test, and From Software rolling out some of the easier enemies early on. Although I will say, there is a stretch of NPC Black Phantoms in the network test that proved to be quite troublesome. As for the other classes aside from the Warrior, the Soldier starts off with a spear and a short sword. I didn't have much luck with the spear, which also appears to have the turtle mechanic from the first Dark Souls game removed. although it may be due to the starting shield the soldier has equipped. In terms of balance and first impressions, of all the builds it was pretty clear to me that the Sorcerer and the Temple Knight had an advantage over builds like the Dual Wielder, which is the case in the first game. If you had buffs or dark magic or miracles, you had the advantage over your opponent who didn't. Interesting mechanics that I noticed were that magic now uses up stamina. There isn't a return of a mana bar like in Demon Souls. There is still a set number of casts per spell, but the fact that it uses stamina certainly changes things. No longer could a magic user spam spells and hurriedly backflip away due to a lack of stamina. Additionally, bows and crossbows both appear to drain stamina as well. All of these new introductions seem to add an element of balance to the game. Fans of this channel will know a constant topic being brought up by me is the notion of ethics, how it's entirely subjective to one player what is fair to do in the game and what isn't fair. Some people find certain aspects of the game such as parrying, dark magic, the dark wood grain ring, or backstabbing to be quote-unquote cheap, where others do not. In addition, the notion of the host healing while being invaded, or during a duel in places such as a kiln for a player to use an Estus flask, can be seen as cheap or unethical. An interesting wrinkle added to this fold in Dark Souls 2 is the addition of the life gem. It acts similar to Elizabeth's mushroom from the Artorias of the Abyss DLC, in that when it's consumed, it will slowly regenerate a portion of your health over time. I found using a life gem in Dark Souls 2 to be more useful at times than chugging an Estus. It was less time consuming, and the fact that it slowly heals you, rather than one burst of health like an Estus, can prove useful when being attacked. How all of this plays into an invasion and ethics remains to be seen. Another change to multiplayer is now red, blue, and white phantoms can all use Estus while in someone else's world. No longer when being summoned will you as a phantom need to rely on the host to heal you. No longer will you need to consume humanity in order to restore health when being neglected by your host. Additionally, while being invaded, a red phantom has the ability to heal the same way the host does, which makes invasions tougher. But a red phantom has a portion of their health permanently removed for the duration of the battle. What percentage of your health is actually removed, I wasn't able to determine during the network test. Another thing I can't necessarily confirm just yet is that when you are falling off of a ledge, the game appears to give you a grace period where you can recover from the fall by quickly rolling out. 1 or 2 rolls sometimes works, whereas in the first Dark Souls, if you're falling, and that's it. A few other small tweaks to the game include the replacement of humanity with an item known as a human effigy. Previously, if you wanted to get back into human form, you'd need to consume a humanity, head to a bonfire, and restore humanity like that. All of this is now streamlined in Dark Souls 2, as the moment you consume a human effigy, you're immediately back in human form. As well, a player can now hold more than 2 weapons in his right hand. It appears to be a max of 3 weapons, which adds a lot more depth to multiplayer. The Temple Knight in particular was holding a halberd for long range, a crescent axe for short range, and a talisman for casting miracles, all in his right hand, with his left hand being able to hold 2 additional weapons. What this means is, if a player so chooses, they could technically hold 5 weapons at any given time, and cycle between them and dual wield them. That means you could have a fire weapon in one hand and a lightning in the other, and then switch on the fly to a talisman and another weapon, and buff that one. There's a lot of possibilities with 1 extra slot, and the improved dual wielding mechanics. There are also new stats upgradable when you go to level up, which is another thing I hope they improve by the time the game finally releases. They've gone back from the original Dark Souls leveling mechanic, where it told you what each stat was in plain English, and they've reverted to the Demon Souls list of icons on the left-hand side. All the while, they've added new stats such as Vigor and Agility, which greatly change the game. Now, if you upgrade Vigor, your overall health goes up. If you upgrade Vitality, your overall equipment load goes up. Endurance is solely for your stamina bar increase. And most interestingly, Agility is a new stat that improves the overall movement speed of your character. It was noticeable when playing that certain builds, regardless of the armor they had on and equipment burden, that their movements were still slow and lumbering. As for the rest of the video, I'm going to throw on some music so you can sit back and enjoy the remaining PvP fights. If you have any questions you can think of for me about the network test, leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. If you'd like to play with me, my PSN is in the description. Stay tuned next week for the co-op network test footage, and as well for any future beta or Dark Souls 2 gameplay. Thanks for watching. Ornstein out.
季節よ眩しい日